Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for tuning into the Cloud Native FM podcast YouTube channel. And June is for Kubernetes. Everybody is celebrating Kubernetes 10th anniversary. And also, June is for some quite heavy conferences. And I think Humanitech is actually running Platform Con, I think, weeks from now. And there are some bunch of other very cool event happening. And I invited my esteemed panelists today on some platform engineering panel discussion. And I will set some agenda for our conversation today. One of the nicest aspects of platform engineering is this shift of people-oriented approach, prioritizing human elements over purely technological intricacies. But is this shift truly happening? Is this statement too bold? What factors are driving this people oriented approach? And what are organization prepared to make this leap? Are they still reluctant, experimenting, or in a state of uncertainty? And what and who causes this uncertainty? Which businesses are ready to transition towards platform engineering? And what should they know from the outset? Where can they seek support, and who can guide them in structuring their platform teams effectively, and how should they design KPIs that align platform initiative with business goal? And I have the best team to reflect on these questions, and some of you will be asking on the YouTube chat. So first thing first, thank you very much for joining us, Colin Griffin.
Hey, it's great to be here. I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks for joining, Colin. And next, George Torado. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, George?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here with a plenty of really good and woodworkers and referencing their sectors. I work as principal SRE in Sparks Group, especially focused on Lidl Plus, the loyalty program of the Lidl supermarket.
Thanks, George. And Jennifer Riggins. Over to you, Jennifer.
Hello, I'm Jen. I've been a tech journalist focusing on the cultural impact of technology, both on the users and especially on the creators, the tech workers creating it for about 13 years now. And especially over the last maybe year and a half, that's been a lot of how to do more with less, which is this focus on developer productivity, platform engineering, etc., automation, getting rid of toil, treating tech workers as the creative workers they are.
Thanks, Jennifer, for the introduction. And last, Romero. Romero's second appearance on the show. But Romero, over to you for your quick intro.
Same. Thank you for having me. Always excited to join you in these super interesting conversations, especially with the panel you put together today. Very exciting. My name is Ramiro Berreyesa. I'm the founder of Octero. At Octero, we built a platform to automate the management of dev, test, and preview environments on Kubernetes. So we're part of the platform engineering movement. All of our customers have platforms. So this is a conversation we have a lot around the human aspect of platform and what it takes, beyond the bits and bytes, but what it takes to roll out a platform once you have humans using it and hopefully benefiting from it. So looking forward to chatting more about this.
Thanks, Romero. Thanks. And we will be actually missing Brian Ross and Nikki Watts on today's conversation for some other conflicting call. They weren't able to join us. But I will start our initiative going to Colin to talk about some of his experience working on Chrome.io. And he also, I've been one of my colleague and the founder of Platform Working Group, and we do have some CNCF platform white paper and a bunch of the work happening in that space. So over to you, Colin. Give us a quick intro of what's happening in the CNCF Platform Working Group and your own initiative.
Good. Yeah. So I'm from Chromeware. Chrome.io is our website. We're a software engineering organization. Other companies develop and design their software development processes and help select the tools and processes and everything that they need to make their people happy, really. I got into platform engineering by backing into the space from the application development side. When we got into cloud native software development 8 to 10 years ago, back in the midst of the container wars, right? We found that the solutions that we were developing weren't maintainable when it was time to hand over those solutions to the infrastructure teams and the ops teams and SRE teams to be able to manage and maintain those things. They didn't have the tools to maintain and be able to actually ship and deploy and manage some of those things for us. So we had to develop competency in those areas. Back then, we didn't know that that was going to be called platform engineering at the time. So we had to develop collections of tools and processes to help those operators give us as developers the tools that we needed. So we've been practicing platform engineering, both in concept and consulting, but also in hands-on demonstration and doing for organizations for about 8 years. So the platform engineering, when we got involved in the platform working group, was very much, we got involved in application delivery, which is the overhead advisory group at CNCF. And then we got into that because we wanted to say, hey, how can I help developers do Kubernetes better? And then the platform engineering working group started to form and found, and there's tons of great energy from all kinds of different organizations that are concerned about what's really important to me, which is how to make my life easier as a developer, but also now the data folks, the ML folks, the operators themselves as consumers of the platform, not just the providers. Lots of really, really interesting things happening and lots of folks trying to define what this movement looks like.
Thanks, Colin. And I think I do call out the platform working group actually wrote 2 papers, platform engineering maturity model and platform definition white paper, I guess. And currently they're actually working on platform as a product. They will be interviewing a lot of the industry leader, what this approach means to them and how to actually evangelize within the organization. So that's the work happening. I think we have a weekly or bi-weekly call in, I think, every Tuesday, last Tuesday of the month, I guess. We will be actually, have been folks joining us all over the world and sharing their expertise as well. Now I move over to George because the computational space in the platform engineering is a big one, and you need to have in-demand spikes, and you have to take care of the need of as and when infrastructure needed. And he will be part of the KEDA, Kubernetes Event-Driven Autoscaling, CNCF, graduated, I think, project. And I want to learn from George today what's happening in that space and what he has encountered some of the platform initiative who are actually working while working with his companies. Over to you, George.
Thanks. I don't know. I'm here just, I will try to share my experience because, to be honest, I'm not a platform engineer. I work more as SRE. But it's also true that in all the companies that I have been working for, it's a common pattern that over the months when the projects are growing and you don't have just a single pod or maybe a cluster for a single pod is overkill, but you don't have just a small subset of microservices and you started needing, what about secret management? What about automatically executed testing? What about autoscaling? What about? And suddenly you find this scenario where it's quite complicated to manage all the things that you already need. Probably that needed is something that you have for yourself to using them or not. Who knows? I'm not here for judging the tools that everybody use, that the people use, but it's true that at this point, that flexibility that Kubernetes brings to us, it's also a thing that we have to manage. By other side, improving the tooling for automatically testing. For instance, Octeto is doing a great job on that approach. It's not a free paid app. It's just because I really like their approach. It's something that you started to need because when you don't have a single API, what can you do for automatically testing all the environments? what can you do for other instances, like automatically creating new repositories and deploying the Hello World, or giving to developers the power of doing their job? And here, taking the words from a big of the company, developers, 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 developers. No, now talking seriously, the goal is to bring to the development teams the power of doing the things. And at this point, creating a platform that can help us is a really good point to take into account and to evolve for giving that speed. And I know I can think that the next one can give their thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for shining these lights on this. And I go over to Jennifer now because Jennifer has been very early from the platform engineering. He actually writes some of the blogs on the new stack platform. And he is, I think, one of the first book that came out in platform engineering. And that is from the Jennifer. And I think I wanted to learn more about from Jennifer how the platform engineering you think started, where is it now, and where you think it will be heading in the next few years.
Well, I think we first have to distinguish platforms, which have been around as long as software, which are very top down and controlling. And that can be useful for access control and things like that. There are a place for those. And platform engineering, which as a term has probably only come about maybe 2 years. Humanitech has really rolled with that term and made it kind of the mainstream term. And I just thought something Ramiro had said at the beginning that I thought was very interesting. You had said once you have humans using it. And I would say that's not platform engineering, because your customers, you need a platform as a product mindset, which you need to build by asking your customers early and often what they want, what is bothering them. And then it's between that and then shared services. So you can create a platform. There's always very voguing when you talk about platform engineering that, you kind of more scaffolding would have been a better euphemism. But the idea that you could go at different levels to decide how much access you need, but you make the easiest way, as Spotify's dubbed them, golden paths. I prefer the yellow brick road, that if you go off the yellow brick road, you might fall asleep in a poppy field. You might get in trouble and caught by flying monkeys. But if you stay on this yellow brick road, this golden pathway, this is the easiest pathway to production. So this has come up with 2 reasons. It's a mix of the tech layoffs that have been the last 18 months. Companies are trying to do more with less. And the complexity of the cloud native space, which we have this cognitive load where we can't honestly, why should a developer need to know about Kubernetes? That's the truth of the matter. Yay, happy birthday, Kubernetes and all. But why should they have to if they don't want to? They can still go off that track if they want to build something else, but it won't be supported at that level. This is a situation where SLAs are involved with your internal customers, things like that. So I would say the idea is that even though we are doing layoffs and it has become more of an employer's market than it has been for a while, for at least a couple years, we still recognize that these are creative workers that don't function best over 20-hour workdays. And also, what's the point? Why are we wasting money and their time on repeat work? And also, there's added in the API space of it all. API management, API discovery is still a huge problem. Reusability of any services is still a huge problem. And why waste money if people have already created it? Find shared problems and shared by majority, at least 80% usually, solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would definitely call out the link to your book. And I think I remember in 2020, I think I spent a lot of time, and I would definitely recommend folks to actually download it here. And there are some very good aspects written on this aspect as well. Now, actually, as Jennifer, where the Jennifer's ended the conversation, that landed up to the thinking of the developer aspect of it. And sometimes you think like developers is quite everywhere in the marketing campaigns, like platform engineer, removing the cognitive load from the developers, and they kind of, oh my God, please
It
leave
makes
us.
sense. I don't think we can really bring different branches on board until developers are taken care of, because they were left behind and in name only of DevOps. DevOps put them first in name only. So it makes sense. That is the largest number of engineers, I think, across the different categories and the different horizontals. So you need them involved. For the first time, really, we're focusing on developer experience because we were so focused on ops experience that we put the burden of ops on developers. That was just not good for anyone involved.
Yes, absolutely. And I think like I will move over some conversation to Romero here, because the Romero's team is working on some of the tooling that developers actually using it, and then they actually working on solving some of the business problem. So Romero, tell us some of the things you actually have learned during the journey of Octato. And number one, there are people watching us from across the globe. What do we mean by the developer experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to kind of like double click on what Jennifer was saying, I think the biggest learning that we've had over the past, we've been building Octelo for 5 years now. Over the past 5 years is what you said, Jennifer. Like the dev experience, like developers were kind of left behind. We went through this revolution of cloud computing, microservices, Kubernetes, which is very powerful. It created this new kind of breed of DevOps, but it did created a lot of now called cognitive load that developers need to handle, and this is costing companies real dollars. Like I see this with our customers all the time, where you have like specialists, front-end developers, people in the security space, people in API design, just to put some examples, that need to learn Kubernetes, need to learn all these kind of like 15 levels of the stack. And it's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. And it really slows companies down. For me, one of the most exciting things about this platform engineering / developer experience movement is that we are acknowledging this. Like, there is a cost to all these layers of abstraction. There is a cost of having people just use all these tools on their own and come up with their solutions, and that organizations need to invest on platforms, on developer experience as an organization. No longer, every developer for themselves. You figure out, your team figures out your bash scripts and your readmes. But now it becomes from an organization, kind of almost top down, of saying, hey, we as an org build software this way. We care about these abstractions. We want to remove and automate, as you all said, these tasks because they are repetitive or they don't really make a business difference, while freeing developers to work on what matters, to quote Jorge, to work on their thing and help them excel at that. I think for me, that is the most, sounds obvious maybe, but after a few years, but if you go back 4 or 5 years, most companies were not thinking in these terms. And that for me is amazing, and is the biggest benefit of this new way of thinking. And I'm a big fan of the work you've done, the articles on tech, on the new stack, on dev productivity, dev experience. I think you make a really good case for this. And to answer your other questions, and for me, dev experience is really this discipline of removing all friction from developers, like just anything that gets in the way of this golden path, anything on the way of the yellow brick road, which I like that a lot. I'm going to start using it. I think it makes it much more, it's much more vivid. It's really about getting that on the way. So, developers can do their thing. You have developers who are excited, who care about your company, your product. And then if you throw all this friction at them, it just makes them unhappy, unproductive. And it's not easy. There's not a single size fits all, but it is very exciting to see more and more companies care about this. And whether it's through the use of internal tooling or vendors like us, that they want to fix this and empower developers to be more self-service, to go fast, and at the end of the day, to do the work they were hired to, and not do all these other intermediate things that you have to do to get started to work. And that to me is what embodies dev experience.
And that's a
Yes.
great point. The getting started with work is a big part of it, onboarding. It's very frustrating if you work at a company and it's 20, 30, 40 days till your first pull request, till you get access. Just like getting access to a computer, you should be able to push things to production theoretically with, of course, guardrails in the first day or two. So you feel successful early on, which sets you up for better success.
Yeah, that first day is so important, or that first week, whatever you want to put the time horizon. We talk a lot about that with our customers. If I just don't want to miss that excitement. Somebody joins your team, they're super happy to join. Hey, we're going to change the world here. We're doing this thing that I'm really into. And then companies with like 20, 30, 50 days process before you can actually show something for your work. It can become such a kind of like demotivating agent that it really kills productivity. I have a friend that he puts it as like, hey, in SF, you typically get 2 years out of a developer before they either change jobs, roles, anything, right? So if you're wasting 2 months at the beginning, that's real money that you're losing. It took you 6 months to hire somebody, and you're losing the first 2 months of productivity. That's 8 months you lost, and then now you only have a year and like 10 months left to get out of this resource. It's just not good business.
And in this time of layoffs, everyone feels vulnerable, and this is during your probation period when you really want people to succeed, but then you're not giving them the tools to succeed, which is upsetting. People are really vulnerable, and it means we still have as much of a leaving rate as before as well.
Yes, and I think I think one of the I actually reading some articles and also watching some other podcasts. I think one of the thing with the layoff at the probation period, particularly, like I think the way we are testing Kubernetes skills is taking a lot of time to somebody test on the Kubernetes skills. It just to have to give them onboarding, you have to set up the entire setup. Once the setup is done, you will actually give them a task, and then you start evaluating. As to the Romero's point, it takes 3 to 4 months. And it's not just in the Kubernetes era. I think it is happening for a very, very long time. And I think one of the nicest things I mentioned during the startup, the one thing I really like about is like platform engineering actually started this notion of people-oriented approach, how we can bring them people on board with the smallest amount of time, and then to have to test their skills, what they are good at. So let the developer is good at is developing feature with, let's say, the Java or .NET programming languages, but he's not good at installing Kubernetes cluster. So in order to develop his application, we are asking them to first learn the Kubernetes and then use your Java skills to solve the customer problem. For some folks, some nerdy folks, that's a great thing. For the rest of us, this is not going to be very easier for us to actually communicate. And I think I can pass on some of the conversation to George here, because he spent a lot of time in the maintaining and contributing to the open source project. So I wanted to learn from the George what he actually sees in the community, a biggest stress or biggest hurdle in adopting or developing or contributing features to the open source repositories such as SCADA.
I think that this is an interesting point that happens, as you said, everywhere. Because the problem of the entrance barrier is everywhere. It's in working environment, it's on open source environment, it's on everywhere. Who hasn't been in the situation of, okay, I need this fix. Okay, I'm willing to make it. I'm willing to contribute it. Maybe I don't have the knowledge for doing properly, but it's just a matter of a header or something. So I'm a good developer. I can do it, but I cannot start the project. I cannot run the test. You can go through the README. Yeah, for sure. 20 pages of README, just for trying to gather all the information, probably totally outdated. Never happens and never won't happen again, right? So these kind of things are quite important. And if you go through the biggest projects, not KEDA, because KEDA, we are graduated, but we are just a group of friends. But if you go through Kubernetes, through Argo CD, where there are thousands of contributors, you cannot think about a random people making random things without any guidance, without any bounded context, without any mechanism for contributing. The same as in the companies. Why we have clearly assumed that if I want to contribute to Kubernetes, I can start up and prepare the environment quite easy, wink wink, quite taking it with the literal distance. But you have all the things to starting it, but you hire an employee for doing the things, and you say, okay, go ahead, it's your life, it's your problem, please fix it. And it's a quite common problem also in open source, but probably in open source we have it clear, because in open source we think, okay, I want to grab contributors from outside my inner circle. But we go through the company and we say, oh, I'm already paying them, so it's your problem, solve my problem. I don't pay you for producing more problems. I pay to you just for solving my own problems. So it's your life, solve my problems. And it's curious, because what we do on open source is that what we should do, or at least the starting point that we should do on companies. And it's totally opposite.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree. I think, as you mentioned, like in Kubernetes product, in the Argo CD, some of the service mesh project, it's a huge time just to grasp at what the project is doing and then making a PR. And some companies and open source style companies, they actually hire an individual and they are taking charge of some open source tool, and it takes a huge amount of time to them to being able to present something into the repository for their company is doing. So it's a big challenge everywhere, and thankfully companies like Octato and a bunch of the other are doing and actually shortening the loop of the developer cycle. That's great to think happening, and it's some innovation happening there. But I go to Colin now, because I see a lot of the question in the community, particularly in the platform engineering, even the organization having all the time. Which businesses are ready to transition to platform engineering?
Oh man, the shill in me, I'd say all of them. Frankly, I think platform engineering truly is a mindset that in general needs to be adopted across an entire organization. One thing that we've been lucky enough to get exposed to over the years, and especially with the platform engineering movement, and we know that platform engineering has been around for a while, and now it's in a hype cycle, and we're calling it platform engineering. And the reality is, we've just put a name to something, and the name and the ability for this to become hype is creating conversations with other parts of an organization. And it's been easier than ever to have conversations with the C-suites and the non-technical participants in technical and non-technical companies, and be able to help them understand, hey, this is about providing people with the right tools to do their jobs at the highest level, right? And platform engineering can take place and be pervasive across the entire organization. It doesn't need to be only about the developers. Developer inherently means somebody producing something. It doesn't necessarily mean hands-on code all the time, right? Again, overgeneralizing, but on purpose. And any organization, if they adopt the mindset of, we will achieve greater success by providing the right tools at the right time to the right people, and there's an engineering and architecture level behind that, outside of even the code is the rubber meets the road part, right? Organizations can experience a great level of success, and it can actually help convince non-technical companies, or companies that deem themselves non-technical companies, that they can be far technical. And what we like to do, or the way that I like to look at it, is we're designing, we're architecting an organization when we're doing platform engineering, more so than just implementing a tool to make an application resilient. And bringing that mindset to organizations really has performed a fundamental shift in some cases. And now the folks that are the buyers and the ones that can actually invest in this, they understand the process and the value they're going to achieve and can actually participate in the process. And participation in the process is the most effective way to drive that adoption from both sides too. So I hope I addressed the question there, but I'm really, really excited about this idea that platform engineering itself can be a tool to provide to the non-technical participants in the business to drive business value, right? Non-technical folks can also be engineers, and that platform is a product mindset, the ability to involve multiple teams, the process to develop a greater understanding of the needs of your people. I love that developers are the ones that we can probably most realize those gains and benefits the quickest. But the data team, even the business development folks, and how they access information, and how can we architect and tacitly create overlap and information share and process share amongst all these different teams. That's platform support.
I think the problem with that, I'm not fully in agreement, because the idea is that you're making the platform the super uber platform, and it should be very specialized. I believe in the thinnest viable platform, which is about doing the smallest thing best. But some use cases are interesting, especially when onboarding in a company. First of all companies are tech companies. They're just more likely accidental tech companies. But like a bank, healthcare are absolutely tech companies. So they have to share in the same problems. And they're some of the first to find a lot of use cases in platform engineering. But with the idea of the thinnest viable platform, is that you build the smallest layer first, you build the smallest bit first, which for anyone joining a new company, discovery and documentation is the most frustrating thing. Finding how to do things and finding who does what, who owns what. So that being where you should probably start. But again, interview your target audience, which includes newbies as well, about what's their pain, what are their hurdles. But a Confluence can be a platform and can be a really useful one, because people are just kind of doing their own thing. So I would say there are some ideas of shared services around who does what better around an intranet or documentation in a company or something. But I would err on the side of not having a cross-company platform, because that leads to something that's not maintainable and not targeted to the audience. I would make it much smaller and go for early wins smaller sooner, personally.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, I agree completely with you, Jennifer. And I didn't mean for it to come across as the idea of one massive platform. We actually talk a lot about the build versus buy, the thinnest viable platform of platforms. I think the thing that I meant to touch on was the concept of platform engineering and the approach. And like, if we look at software development, you start with MVP, start small, have a, part of the engineering process is to have that clearly defined small scope. And I am 100% with you. You have to start with one base, right? Start one platform. And we may find in an organization, especially a large one, there will be multiple thinnest viable platforms. It just depends on who's going to manage, maintain roles, responsibilities, all that stuff. And the companies that don't do that engineering effort are the ones that end up buying a massive platform like a Salesforce and expecting to solve all their problems and end up, down a path that they shouldn't be on. Totally.
Yeah, and I think the data from last year's State of DevOps report, which has been kind of rebranded by Puppet to State of Platform Engineering report, because DevOps is going through rebrand as well, says the average team company has 6 to 8 platforms already, which may be a problem or may work well, because like data scientists work very differently and not all agile mindset and things fit them. So it's just a fact.
And same question to Romero, but I quite twisted a bit. So what are the use cases? What are the conversation you have been noticing with some of your customers or in the community that you see are the cornerstone of the platform engineering initiatives?
There's a few, and I think like both Colin and Jennifer said, there's hardly a one size fits all approach here. It really depends on the maturity size of the team, but definitely the the getting started, as we're talking about like onboarding discovery, one of the first things we always hear is, hey, I have this team. You have somebody new, and new can mean new to the company, new to the team, new to a project. Like onboarding happens multiple times when you're in an organization, not just the day you join. Discovering these things, it's like, hey, I'm going to work on this API. Where is it? Where's my data? Where can I run a copy of it? Right? How can I get an environment for this specific application? That is one. Another big scenario we get, which I think is kind of like the prime definition of platform, is abstraction. And we were talking about this earlier, is I don't want to be exposed to, some of the companies we work with, they're very mature organizations. They have hundreds of microservices. And every team is like, I don't want to deal with everything. Like, I don't want to have to manually go and figure out how do I get 100 services running on my dev cluster. So the abstraction and not only the abstraction in the terms of like, I don't want to see it one click, but the logical abstraction of how do we group this? Like, how do I figure out this other business area? What do they need? If I'm going to change an API, how do I know which other APIs might break because they depend on me? This kind of conversations, especially at scale, are happening more and more. And I find it fascinating because, kind of going back to the topic of today, which is kind of like the human aspect of this, it always goes back to, how do I do more with less? How do I get these developers to kind of like punch above their weight? These days we have less resources. So it always comes back to like, hey, how can I make them go faster with good guardrails? And, the topic of golden paths, yellow brick road comes a lot. Those three, I would say, are what I'm seeing a lot out there. And I think the work that everybody's doing here, the thought leadership, is really helping define the language and what people come up asking about. In the early days of Octero, we got like all these random requests and of everything, right? Like, hey, I want a platform for everything. I want to solve every single pain point my developers have. Can you do it for me and for cheap and today? That's no longer the case. Now we're seeing this refinement of like coming with very specific asks around discovery, around onboarding, around business abstractions. And lately, of course, around also like cost. Is like, how can I understand my platform? How can I leverage my platform to understand where am I spending, who's spending more? That's also one that is becoming a lot more popular lately, which, understandable given the layoffs and budget crunches and all those things we're seeing right now in the market.
Yeah. I just need to call out one attention, because for me, I haven't seen such of the conversation in the internet more often. So I work for a company in 2016 where we have a very restricted environment. Even just to install a VS Code extensions, we have to file a ticket for our compliance team. Do I'm allowed to add some extension in a VS Code? And often a time we don't have access to the internet while we're developing the features of the platform in 2016, because we working with the healthcare and they have some very sensitive data. And then I go into the banking side, and then the same scenario, don't have access to anything. Just we need to understand we actually working in Iceland. Nobody is touching our laptop, and we not have our own laptop. It's a company provided setup. I believe for those sites type of scenarios, platform is a big deal, because you can actually centralize most of the things developers need in a one box, and then you actually add some sort of VPN gateway or another tooling layer that can protect sensitive data to go out of the company's wall. But I might be wrong. I don't see anybody talking about it, or is it I am wrong?
I just don't think that's platform engineering necessarily. That could just be an old-fashioned platform. That's just giving people access to stuff. Platform engineering is building an easier automated pathway if they want it, in my opinion. But obviously, secure data is important.
And it's definitely important, I think, especially with the sentence of all these big security companies, enterprise browsers, all that stuff. But I agree with Jennifer. I think this Well, I see it, I guess, agree and disagree, you could say. Because I do see that, our business, which is automating dev environments, collides a bit with this world of like secure access. We do get, talk to companies. Actually, I was just talking to a big pharma company a couple of days ago, and their platform team, one of the problems they wanted to solve was, hey, I'm not going to in the company, but they were like, hey, we're building this Ruby on Rails application, but our standard issue laptops, that come from the company are very limited. We don't have admin, sudo access. We can't really install all the tooling. And they were looking for a way to kind of empower their platform to give developers access to all this tool in a way that is secure. They were thinking about using Octeto or other solutions in the cloud dev environment space, browser ID in the browser kind of thing. And it was the platform engineering group kind of like they got this request. They're trying to figure out how to automate it. So it was interesting. We don't get that super often. I think a lot of companies are now relaxing this idea of like, you can't trust developers. Don't give them access to like their own laptops. Don't let them install things. I think that discipline is evolving. But we do see it, and I do see this as the domain of platform engineering from the perspective of going back to enabling the end user, enabling the developer. Because I think one of the big kind of like platform shifts we're seeing, to reuse the word platform, is this change of the IT / DevOps / platform engineering team from being the team that says no to everything, and the team that you have to kind of go around and do, like shadow IT and get your own kind of AWS account, to these teams of enabling yellow brick roads and telling you, this is what you can do. If you do it this way, is the easy way. So once you think about it that way, I do think there is a space there for these kind of activities. And I see it in like pharma, maybe in government, but not as much anymore in like finance and other spaces. I think it's gonna take a while before we're gonna build a fully trusted chain that starts with the developer laptop. But it's definitely something that it is out there.
And you used the word that hasn't come up yet, which is enablement, which Team Topologies calls enabling teams. And we've somehow gone 44 minutes in a platform engineering talk without mentioning Team Topologies, which I think is doing a disservice to any listeners that aren't familiar with Team Topologies. But yeah, that's what platform engineering is. It's enabling team. It's not a platform team.
Well, one of the things we talked about too is the tooling complexity and the cognitive load and all of that, right? Secure access to infrastructure, data sovereignty, all that stuff is very, very much real. It's a real challenge if you're doing PCI compliance, healthcare, whatever. And having to log into a VDI environment just to get to your development tools is a huge pain. It's a significant challenge, and it's but tools are coming and are actively being worked on, like Octeto, that give us, the ability to develop faster and easier on board. And I'm really excited about just even the concept of code spaces, the remote code spaces in general. This idea that I can launch my VM code browser and I am my environment with my tools, my code, digital commands, parity, access to, to mock APIs that match production APIs that have been provided for me. When we're able to help companies realize that mentality, onboarding is in a matter of minutes and not weeks and not months. And so we're definitely seeing companies that are realizing that and trying to put those tools in place. If anything, you see groups trying to transition to provide more independence to the developers and the ability to increase velocity and do forward feature requests, but they can't test them in production because there's no way for them to test something against an API. And so they have all of these merges, and then they merge into production, and then they have to try to do a refactor, rework, and respond to a bug. And the platform engineering side to me on that is, let's provide them with production parity in a dev environment, in those cases where we have to have that compliance and access as a concern, so my developers can do things faster, can QA faster, can prevent bugs from being released or defects because they just didn't have access to a service. I think framed correctly, there's definitely a platform engineering initiative there. And it can be part of the platform. But again, it's just defining. You have to understand and define what your platform is. If you don't need all that stuff, then don't build all that stuff, right? But if you are in a compliant industry, you need to provide your developers with access to production-like environments if you want your deployments to be successful.
Yes, absolutely. I think that lead me to the next conversation. That's super interesting because Jennifer previously talked about team topologies, and I look around the DevOps state of DevOps report. I think it's from the Puppet, and they mentions, I believe, many of the folks who are in the platform teams are some sort of an infra heavy and infra loaded platform team as well. And now we see, and I would want to call out to learn from all of you that what does it means when people refers platform as a product, and who is the intended audience for this concept. And the reason of choosing of this question was, in these days we look at the internet, we have feature team, empower product team, and bunch of other really different teams in the horizon. So who is our audience? Where should, who is the person we're talking about the platform as a product? Floor is open.
I mean, the audience is platform engineers that aren't listening to and doing platform engineering. And the idea is that it's a product because you're testing and building with tight feedback loops, and you're building what your customer wants, and you're delivering value to your customer, which happens to enable them to deliver value to your end user, who's usually your paying customer. But it's reminding them that you have to market to them. You need to have a roadmap. You need to have continuous feedback, at least a quarterly survey plus customer support channels. I think that's who the audience of platform as a product is really reminding platform engineers that they don't know what to build. They don't know best, because that's a hard habit, because they are engineers and they know their own frustrations. But it's about creating empathy and betting on teams, or having the borrowing team members for a couple months to build what they want into the platform, things like that. Empathy and listening and feedback.
Yes, and just I kind of twisted a question to the Romero and going back to him as well, because if you look at in the DevOps era in 2017, 2018, as we going up to the scale, we end up realizing there's a one DevOps manager, usually we call in the some of the organization. That whose job is to actually able to understand what the business problem are and what are the different tools that solve the best business problem with that one tool, and then find a skilled individual within the DevOps team to give this responsibility to in configuring, installing, and managing. But what it ended up happening is, on those time, DevOps manager are not anywhere. There are very few of them. So what ended up happening is the same people from the same company with previously different role joining as DevOps manager and end up nothing as an outcome. With the platform as a product, people who has skepticism, they says we're shouting out, we need a product manager or the product mindset. But end up happening is the same individual from the same company with a different role of, let's say, solution engineer jumping in and doing a job of a product mindset and becoming a platform product manager. So what are the caveat or what are the benefit for this approach?
I think the biggest benefit is kind of touching what Jennifer was talking about, which is the kind of having a clear idea that when you're building a platform, is like, don't build it for yourself. Don't build it to solve your pains. You have an end user. I think that is the most important thing of the shift on DevOps. When I was back then an engineer, the idea was like, as you said, like there's a team and they're solving all these obvious quote unquote challenges, and you had embedded DevOps in every team and all these things. And I think back then we kind of forgot who is this for. I think that's very important of this kind of like new line of like thought of say, hey, there is a customer. Like you're building a platform to enable your team, your company, your organization to thrive, to empower them. So I think it is very important to remind that, and don't go and build everything at once, get feedback. We're talking about this as well. So I think that is where maybe you don't need the specific kind of product manager role, but I always like to say that if you're going to have it anyway, you need someone in these teams that has this product mentality of figure out what is the minimum viable platform, figure out what are the needs you're solving, and then build something, ship it, validate that it works, and then go back and ship the next version. This sounds a lot like building products. The fact that it's internal makes no difference. You have users. And also when it comes to adoption, the same thing applies. Like when you roll out a platform, the days of the CTO forcing everybody to use one tool and one tool only are long gone. When you're building platforms, you have to think of your strategy for adoption. Who are your champions? Who's gonna be the person convincing someone else? All of this is it's just like products. So I think we can learn of what has worked in the discipline building products for external users and bring them in to internal users. I think that is very important, because if you don't adopt that mentality, I think the biggest risk is you build something gigantic that nobody cares about, which is the same risk that you do when you're building products. And you have this platform, and you could have a executive sponsorship, and they're like, yes, you use this or you're out of the company. And people will find their way around that. They will fake use your platform and then do their own thing. Or they'll be like, you know what? Yes, this company sucks. I'm going to go somewhere else where they have better tools. Maybe that's not happening so much right now, given the current environment around, the tech market. But, people will just stop working and find their own tools, or build a platform on top of your platform. I've seen this happen before because they hate your abstraction so more. And these are all like wasted efforts. And, as the CEO of a company, I'm more keen about this thing now, that I don't want this to happen. And this is, I think, where the platform mentality comes in, and be empathetic, be kind, understand the problem you're solving, don't solve too much at once, go for early wins. The same thing that we've learned the hard way in building product. External facing products applies to platforms because they are products.
And we just haven't mentioned, but it's optional. Just like if you are producing a product that you're selling to the world, it's optional. So they don't have to adopt it. This does not work. You are not adopting a platform engineering or platform as a product mindset if you are forcing people to do it. It is okay to have things forced, especially around security and stuff, but that's not what platform engineering is about. So that's okay. And then just one thing that we have to remember, as much as we're talking about platform as a product, but we saw in the early days of the layoffs a whole year ago, a lot of platform teams were let go because they also still have business stakeholders. And if they're building too big and taking too long and not agile, they're not moving towards a business goal. They're not proving the value of their budget. And we can't forget, what it comes down to, this is a way to make one of your biggest expenditures, which is engineering salaries, more successful and more worth it. So, and that does open up other things. We mentioned at some point the idea of FinOps and knowing how much each team is spending in cloud costs and a way to optimize at that level. If you do it right, if you are tracking things and understanding how things interconnect in a company, that's totally fine. But you still do need to do it. Connect it to overall goals, things like that in the company, the OKRs. That can be very interesting. So we can be all about, yay, the developers, but it also has to have a business use case, especially in the last year and a half.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So before I let you off, we're top of the hour. It's been a great conversation, talking to you with a different mindset, with a different background. And I think, once again, uh, I think the people approach is quite very important for the platform engineering initiative. Back then in the VMware world, we know why we actually choosing the VMware approach, or compared to the on-prem. It's costing us so much of the RAM, CPU, storage. If you choose the right of the on-prem, let's go the VM route, and then we go for the cloud. And it's all about saving costs sometime, and in some time the cost goes way beyond than what we actually expected for. So it's a trade-off that time, but I think it's boiled down to the how we actually evangelize internally within the organization around some of the construct. So but I leave you with a one analogy. Some of my friends told me quite recently, and that is from the Formula One car sector on the platform engineering. I wanted to learn from you. Is it a correct way of thinking about platform engineering or not? He said, like, in a Formula One car, previously in the DevOps era, you are competing the lap in a circuit, and the car is not actually operating during the lap, but you couldn't do anything with the DevOps mindset. You it's the car has to complete the lap, go back into the podium or in the pit lane, and then we test and try and it out, and then it's go over to the circuit again and to complete the lap. With the platform engineering, is it true? I want to learn from you. You can complete the lap, and if something bad happens to the car while it's completing the lap, you can make some adjustment, not all, but some adjustment on the fly to kick the speed up.
So you're talking like progressive delivery and automatic rollbacks or feature flags within your product, because that's not bad. But I guess your platform is probably not in production, so I don't know if that's necessary. But maybe Ramiro or Colin have interpreted that differently.
I'm cheating because I've used that metaphor before. I'm like the pit crew, and the way I see it, right, with platform is going back to empowerment, which I know we didn't touch on too much, and that is something that I think sometimes us deep in the platform world forget. The platform is not the end product for the company. The platform is the enabler for the developers to do the work that is going to set this company apart. So I always see the platform engineering team as the crew, as kind of like, when the car is going slow, they can help diagnose and suggest better tires or a different mix of like oxygen fuel to kind of help you go there, or when you tell the car change the tires from wet to dry. I think that is a good way of thinking of the platform engineering team, is the team behind. Like, you're not shipping your platform to your customers, I hope, unless you're building a platform like us. You're shipping products, you're shipping value, and the value is created by developers who are going to go faster with your platform. But it is very important to understand that, and I think a lot of empathy and a lot of great work comes from understanding where everything fits in this piece. So I see it that way.
Over to you, Colin.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of ways that I could probably interpret that a little bit too. One thing that's interesting also, that obviously the concept of send the car out, complete the lap, and come back. Maybe platform engineering, we've decided it's too expensive to risk sending that car out to wreck every time, right? So maybe we have to simulate, build a simulator, build a wind tunnel, test some things, and then increase the chances that we'll be successful when we send that car out and lap. So like that tighter feedback loop, that inner developer loop, but that obviously isn't right for everybody either. But then maybe also on the side of these Formula One cars, they're very modular. You can replace each part, and so designing the car to allow specialists for each part to come and adjust independently, right when that car does come back in the pit lane and send it out. Maybe that's a nice thing too. One analogy that I heard, I wish I could credit whoever it was too, and going back to the platform thing, and I wish it wasn't necessarily the approach, but it's very true today, and I hope we all kind of get through it. But the idea that platforms are like toothbrushes, right? Everyone needs one, but nobody wants to use anybody else's. I think is an interesting one too to think about as well.
Yes, that is a super one, absolutely. And I think on the core side, I think you can build a RB20, but you need a max driver as well.
And not everyone's a 10x engineer. and not everyone's a Formula One driver. So maybe you shouldn't be investing in a feat of engineering, but working on a thinnest viable platform first.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What is, how do you make millions of dollars with a race team? You start with hundreds of millions of dollars. Right. It's kind of an age-old analogy. So I think that rings true very much in this case too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much all for actually joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. It's been a great conversation talking to you as well. And people, do join us. Do join or follow these people over the internet, on Twitter. The link into the YouTube description where to find those as well. So Colin is working on Chrome.io. Go check that out. Here's a website and the link to it as well. And also we will be running a platform working group, second and fourth week of week of each month. We actually host some get together meeting on to able to track what actually happening in the community. And meet Romero, and I will love you because I mostly spend a lot of time in development, and I don't have a word to tell you how important Octato is for me. And there are some big reason why I'm saying it too as well. So go check that out. Here's octato.com and try that out. And Jennifer wrote a book, and there are a bunch of some tremendous resources on the new stack around platform engineering. So it's a go-to resource for all of us in tracking platform engineering initiative. So hope you join the conversation. If I miss anything, go send some question on the chat or the YouTube or in the Twitter. We definitely try to answer those as well. Great, Colin joining us from the chat. It's a great conversation inside. Thanks for joining us as well. So hope you have a great day, and platform engineering, keep looking up. We will meet soon.
Thank you, everybody. It's good seeing you.